Good morning, students. Happy Monday. Glad to be with you guys again online. We're just going to talk a little bit about this cellular immune response part of the adaptive immune system. It won't take very long because a lot of things are similar to this as to the B cell response that we talked about last week, the humoral response. This one is called the cell-mediated immune response. And so basically, in the B cell humoral response, we had an activation of the B cells, and those B cells became those plasma cells that were basically antibody factories that sent antibodies throughout the humors, the fluids of the body. So when we look at the cell mediated response, we're looking at actual cells involved in defending the body against invaders. Okay, so let's take a quick look at that. So right here, we're talking about the same thing where antigens have to be presented by macrophages. Remember that macrophages are the cells that engulf and digest anything, old cells, invaders, pathogens, whatever it is. And I'll show you a picture on the next slide of that actually happening. So once the antigens have been digested and presented by the macrophages to an immunocompetent T cell, which is called antigen presentation, that's where T cells begin to be able to recognize self and non-self so that it can understand this is an invader. We have to find this in the body and destroy it. And so after this antigen binds with this T cell, clones of that T cell form like we saw in B cells, but it produces different classes of cells. Okay, and here we can see a lymph node where a lot of this activity is happening. Okay, so this is where the heart of the fight is happening in, and also in these malt tissues, in these different mucosal tissues that we talked about the other day with the lymphoid tissues, the malt tissues being where these immune system cells are found. So here's this process of antigen presentation. So number one, antigens, this thing right here, you see the yellow with the red, is engulfed by this macrophage, and a dendritic cell is just one type of macrophage. And so basically it digests it and presents pieces of the digested antigen on the surface of the cell. Then a helper T cell comes and binds to that. And basically, what's happening here is that the dendritic cell is introducing the helper T cell to the invader that we are going to go look for in the body from this point on. So this helper T cell produces these chemicals called cytokines. Okay, so the T cell recognizes self and non-self. It's a double recognition saying, okay, this does not belong in the body because what we normally should have in the body, the T cell will recognize as normal. So once these cytokine chemicals have been released, some of those go back and activate the helper T cell to do something additional. Some go to cytotoxic, what will become cytotoxic killer T cells. And those are the ones that are basically running through the body, killing everything they come into contact with that they have recognized now as the invader. The cytokines then will also activate the B cells, and we talked about that the other day. And this is where um, those floods of antibodies get produced. And everything is a response to the helper T cell meeting this antigen for the first time, okay, and secreting these chemicals. So we're having the formation of the clones of T cells, just like we had the clones of the B cells. So when we talk about those T cell clones, one type of clone is going to be those cytotoxic killer T cells, and their job is just to kill. Okay, they use this same perforin chemical that we saw earlier the other day in the second line of defense. So they find the invader and they kill it. So that's a pretty simple job. Okay, these are guys like the special forces. Okay, then we have that group of helper T cells is another group of cells that are part of this immune response. And the cool thing about them is they recruit other cells to help fight. So, for example, one of the things they do is when these cytokines are secreted by those helper T cells, those cytokines go to groups of macrophages you see down here and make them even hungrier than they were before. So when they see these pathogens, they are going to be just absolutely voraciously eating them, digesting them, and getting rid of them. So they're no longer a danger to the body.